Okay, good morning, ladies and gentlemen, for the meeting of the Pitlochry Common Good Fund Committee. Are there any apologies? With no apologies, everybody is present. Are there any declarations of interest? No, thank you. Okay, moving on to item 3, the minute of the meeting of the Pitlochry Common Good Fund for the 24th of April for approval. Are we happy to agree the minute? Thank you. Thank you. In terms of matters arising, I have one matter arising, which is an update on the review of the Pitlochry Common Good assets. I'd ask Mr. Fogg to give us an update, please.
Yes, good morning. Thank you, Convener. I'm happy to do that. The work on the preparation of the full register for Perth Kinross Council's Common Good assets has been progressed substantially this year. Funding was made available to me from budget flexibility application that became effective from April of this year for 1 year only. It was decided to use that resource by engaging in the first instance the services of a summer student who worked with us from June to September of this year, and it was a very successful appointment, and he was able in his time with us to complete a review of the entirety of the Perth Kinross estate. After he left us in September, it was then necessary to have that work checked thereafter by a qualified solicitor. I didn't have the resources in my existing team, but from the additional resources that have been made available for this year, I then resolved to recruit my predecessor, Linda Whiteford, who is not only a highly experienced property solicitor, but also has a great deal of familiarity with the council's own estate. And to my delight, I was able to coax her back into service to complete the work of further checking the Common Good estate for all Common Good accounts and areas. I had hoped that the work would be completed in its entirety by this calendar year, but for different reasons that was not possible. But Linda did start with us 2 weeks ago and worked with us for 3 days and will be returning in January next year. And I'm now expecting that the work will be done such that the register will be available in draft by the end of this financial year. For the 3 days that she was with us, knowing this was ahead of me, I asked her specifically to target Pitlochry Common Good assets, which she did, and that work has now been completed. And it will be taken forward together with the assessment of all other Common Good areas. And I've liaised with my colleagues in Community Empowerment for the consultation exercise to be commenced thereafter. The committee might also want to know that I was very keen when I began this project that we didn't simply produce the list in narrative form, leaving people to identify in their own minds what it looked like in map form, but I've spoken to colleagues who have responsibility for Landmaster, Concerto, the council's digitalised mapping system, and I understand it's quite a straightforward system to map the title against the narrative, so that when a member of the public looks through the register, they can quickly switch from the descriptor of the subjects to seeing it in mapped form without difficulty, and that's the form it will be taking. I have a strong preference not to issue the register in bits and pieces. I would rather have it done in its entirety, because I don't want to be accused of favouring Crieff over Aberfeldy over Pitlochry, depending on which one was done. So I'd like it to be done as a composite exercise. That said, the work involved in Perth is substantially greater than everywhere else. And if it should prove to be the case that it would take longer to complete the work in relation to the Perth Common Good account, there might be a case for doing it in two stages, but I'm reasonably confident that it can all be done as a composite exercise. And that's where we're at.
Okay, thank you for that update, Mr. Fogg. Are there any questions or comments? Councillor McDade.
Yeah, just thank you. That's really good to hear that we're making progress on this. Can you give us, you've said obviously you want to do it as a complete exercise, and that's understandable. And perhaps we can separate Perth off, as you say, from that in terms of it's a big piece. But what sort of deadline can we expect to see the completed work in terms of committee deadline? So I'm assuming not February perhaps, but perhaps April?
Yeah, I think that's correct. One of the drivers that's been set for me is the funding is available to be used in this financial year only. So I'm really under strong pressure to have the work completed this financial year. What I didn't say and had intended also to say was that I feel it's probably unnecessary to produce reports to each of the Common Good committees of the register for consultation. But given that when it is published, it's likely that some of you will be contacted by constituents for comments or views. Therefore, it was my intention to email out to all members of all Common Good committees 2 to 3 weeks before the actual publication, saying this is what it will look like. You might be contacted. Please direct them to Mr. Haxton, not Mr. Fogg. So that you see it. I think that would be sensible. I don't think there'd be any benefit in saying this is what we're going to consult on. But once the consultation has been run, it would then be my intention thereafter to report back to each of the Common Good committees in turn with the results of the consultation responses.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Fogg. Any other comments or questions? No, okay, thank you. Can we move on then, please, to item 5, applications financial assistance. We have one matter before us. Our financial assistance budget is non-existent in that sense, but this is a proposal from the Pitlochry Girl Guides in relation to funding to support the trip to Italy in July 2020. And what they are seeking for is £100 for each of the 13 girl guides that live within the Pitlochry Common Good area, so a total of £1,300. And I wonder if there are any proposals in relation to this.
I believe our budget's nothing, and we can't overstep that. So I think that's where we are with this, is it not?
I think I'd be right in saying from previous Common Good meetings I sat in, it's not hard and fast. That's certainly the guidance that we're given, that we, our budget for the year is, generally speaking, the interest and not to touch the capital, but that doesn't mean to say we can't touch the capital if we so desire. Mr. McDade.
Yeah, as much as I think we would all like to support the Pitlochry Girl Guiding group, I think that given the very limited funds, this is out of our 2 Common Goods in Highland Ward, this is a very, very small one compared to Aberfeldy. If we were to give anywhere near the level that's being asked for, that constitutes something of around, I think, 1/6 of the Common Good capital. So I think we should stick to the policy. I think we had discussed perhaps a previous Common Good, I can't remember which of our committees it was, but asking whether the applicants were made aware of the policy at the time of applying and made aware of what the available budget was.
Mr. Haxton, are you able to respond to that?
Yeah, we're happy to go and put
yeah, I think on this occasion, the conversation would normally be that the application would be submitted and they would be advised that there is no hard and fast budget for this particular Common Good Fund, but it's at the discretion of the committee as to whether or not they wish to award a fund.
I think we had agreed, however, previously that at the time of applying, everyone would be made aware of what the available grant that had been approved was, because we had a situation, I think it was Amberfeldy last year, where we had an application that far exceeded what we had approved as the budget, and obviously Aberfeldy has about an £800 budget, and at that point we agreed that everyone would be made aware at the time of applying, so that the committee didn't get to committee and have a situation where we were asked to, or people might have the idea that they're going to false hope, I think is exactly the word.
I would imagine we're duty bound to bring the application forward, but I understand what you're saying, just about not raising expectations amongst the organisations. So obviously we appreciate if that could be just borne in mind for the future. So am I right in suggesting that our decision on this occasion is no award? Agreed?
I think so. I think that's
Okay,
agreed.
great, thank you. If we
Sorry,
can,
convener, can I just
Councillor McDade?
just on that ask, perhaps if you as convener could perhaps send them a nice letter saying that we support the efforts. It's just
Happy to do
setting
so.
out the situation we're in. Thank you.
Okay, happy to do so. Thank you. Okay, moving on to item 6, the financial statement. And if Mr. Coyne could update us on that, please.
Thank you, Convener. Yeah, the report provides an update on the audited final outturn for 2018-19 and provides a monitoring position and projected outturn for financial year 19-20. So it's really a paper for noting, and the committee is requested to note the audited income and expenditure of the 31st of March 2019 as shown in Appendix 1 to the report, and to note the income and expenditure to the 31st October 2019 and the projected outturn to the 31st of March 2020 for the fund as set out in Appendix 2. So when we last met, the committee considered a report on the 24th of April, which provided estimates for 18-19, which included a £20 surplus. Following closure of the accounts, the surplus was slightly higher just due to additional interest. The closing balance was £7,362. And this year we're estimating interest to be around the £20 mark again, so a closing balance at the 31st of March 2020 of 7,382. Happy to take any questions.
Councillor McDade.
Hi, yes. What sort of account investments is the money in?
The balance is actually invested in the Council's Loans Fund, so it doesn't attract a huge rate of interest. We do have a policy which is approved by Council 2 or 3 years ago, which allows investment of funds, but you need a minimum balance of £10,000 in the Council's Loans Fund to attract a higher rate of interest. And that was approved by Council a number of years ago.
So am I right in thinking what you're saying there is if the Common Good Fund amounts to more than £10,000, it gets a better rate of interest than this? And so obviously this one's in particularly poor state in that sense.
The way it's done, it's managed on a fixed term deposit basis. So if the balances are over £10,000, we can put it on fixed term deposit for usually up to a year, depending on the interest rate that's available at the time. And the rest of the balances attract what we call just it's a really low rate of interest, but it applies across all the common good funds as well. And it's the in terms of administration, that's the only pragmatic way we can really do it.
So, sorry, if I may, convener. Why was 10,000 picked? Because obviously we are a wee bit below that, but I'm just curious as to what the reason for 10,000 was picked.
The £10,000 was on the basis of that's a realistic amount to generate a realistic amount of interest for the benefit of the inhabitants. That was solely the purpose, and as I say, that was approved by the council. I think it was about 2014 that was approved by the council.
Councillor Williamson.
I was just wondering actually how many common good funds we have that actually fall below the 10,000 level.
Most of them, yeah. The ones that we have fixed term deposits for are Gowrie. James might keep me right here. Perth, Ochterarder, Aberfeldy, Kinross, off the top of my head.
I wonder, I presume you'll not have these facts to hand, but I wonder if you may be able to supply us with the interest rates for the two different types of account, just in your own time. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. I mean, the interest rate in the fixed term deposit will fluctuate depending on the time the deposit is made. In terms of the interest rate on revenue balances, James might know off the top of his head.
Yeah, the rate on revenue balances is approximately 0.3%. The rate on a fixed term deposit for 1 year is 1.05%. So if the 10,000 rule was to be removed and Pitlochry was to invest fixed term 7,000, the interest would still only climb to £73 for a year.
Yes, but that's nearly 4 times what we're getting at the moment.
Okay, I think that's maybe something. Sorry, Councillor Lyle.
It's definitely something to look at. My only query would be, the most likely we put it into a fixed term deposit, there'll be an added administration fee in that.
Okay, it's food for thought, and maybe we take that away and we can think further about it. Okay, are there any further questions in relation to the financial statement? Councillor McDade.
Just on the back of that, and perhaps this is something that Mr Fogg could answer as part of his work, it is whether there are assets identified, new assets potentially identified, whether the income from that asset might then go into the common good. I know there is a policy around money for the common goods, but I'm not quite sure that the Perth Common Good works in the same way, does it?
I'm not sure, Councillor McDade, I fully understood that question. If there were assets that ought to be identified as common good assets and held in a common good account, then yes, any income derived from them should properly accrue to that common good account. Beyond that, I wasn't sure what you're saying. I'm not anticipating that any work we are doing is going to alter the profile of the Pitlochry common good account, though.
Right, no, that's, well, that, my previous understanding, I think, from asking this question had been that the money from common goods was essentially offset in a lot of ways by the administrative costs, because obviously there are certain assets within the Pitlochry Common Good that actually do generate income for the council, most notably the car parking, which was identified as a new asset last year, which we've had at committee before, which, if that over a period of time, might actually take us to the £10,000 mark, for example. So that's kind of where my query was going. I'm just wondering whether there might be others.
I suspect that's something that we'll come to when the asset register is produced, and we can argue the toss about anything that it contains.
I'm sure we will. Thank you.
Okay. Any further questions? Are we all done? Okay. Thank you very much. That concludes the meeting of the Pitlochry Common Good Committee. Thank you.